Hi, I'm Steve Whaley with Bluebird, and welcome to A Bird's Eye View. Our podcast today is going to focus on the reliability of our alternative fueled buses. Now, some people think that because it's an alternative fuel bus that it's not as durable and you have to compromise on things. But I think we'll find out today that that won't be the case. Here with me today is retired Lieutenant Colonel Shay Coates. He is the Executive Director of the City of Newport News Public Schools system. And he wasn't always the Transportation Director there for the City of Newport News. We're going to talk a little bit about your background. Colonel Coates, thanks for being with us today.
It's great to be here with you today. Thank you.
I appreciate that. So before you were the Transportation Director for the City of Newport News Public Schools, you had a little bit of history with the United States Army. Tell us a little bit about that. I think it was a commander of a battalion of the 6th Transportation Battalion?
Yeah, that was my last command assignment, was being a transportation commander for the 6th Transportation Battalion in Newport News, right in Fort Eustis in that area. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you weren't always in Newport News. I think you were in Korea, Germany, Kuwait, Iraq, all over.
Correct. In the Army, you kind of move around a little bit. You get comfortable, and it's time to go to the next place. So it was good to go see different parts of the world, and also to do the job, being a transportation officer, which kind of led into, I was in the Army, they changed it to logistics officer. So not only was I supposed to be an expert in transportation, but also supply, maintenance, fuel. You could do any of those jobs while you're in the Army as time went along.
So you had lots of equipment, lots of people to move around, and these are critical positions here for making things happen around the world, for keeping everybody safe and deployment. So I think it'd be safe to say that you have a pretty demanding perspective on your equipment. So now that you're doing another critical mission, I would say, and that is moving the kids of Newport News to and from school, how is it on earth that you got started in using something other than diesel? Because all the buses were diesel when you got there, right?
Correct. I was there for about 2 years in the position, and my lead mechanic, he came to me and said, "Hey, I've been looking at, we should probably go propane." I'm like, "What?"
Yeah, what?
Like, they really do that? New to the field of people transportation. And I said, "Well, have you done your research?" And I should have known. He's done his research, and he's an old diesel mechanic. So for him to come to me and say, "Hey, we might need to look at switching over to propane, gradually," I said, "Okay, let's see it out." So at that time we talked to our local Bluebird dealer at the time, and we talked to them the viability of it. So we went through a couple steps before we got to that point. They let us borrow a bus to see how it was, and actually had it in one time, and our superintendent found out we had the bus in just for testing. And so happened she was taking around local leaders to the schools, to go into different schools that day. So we had a driver take them, and she was amazed
really
that she could have a conversation on the bus and not have to talk above. So that right there, she's like, "I really like that." That ability for you just to have conversations on the bus. And so we went that route, getting that leadership buy-in at the beginning, but we knew we had to do some work first and see, okay, can we even source, can we be able to have the infrastructure necessary?
Because it's not just the vehicle itself, it's getting energy in these vehicles.
Right.
And I know how critical that is, around the world for, all of your, military deployments. But even for your moving of students, you have to have that infrastructure there for making that happen. So when you started testing out the propane vehicles, how did you get these things fueled?
Well, first, before we even decided, once the leadership said, yes, this is the direction we want to go in, the school board agreed, we did a kind of went to each. We have 3 different bus lots that we have, and we went to each one and said, okay, can we set up a fuel station of some sort at each of these bus stops? So it's kind of like a feasibility study. Sure. Can we do this at each one?
You already had diesel at all.
We had diesel at every location, and then some regular gas at one of the locations. Mm-hmm. So can we get in a 2K tanker, or can we get in a larger size tanker at any, which size can we get at each of these lots? Okay. And so once we found out we can do them at all 3 lots, mm-hmm. we knew that, okay, we can start going in that direction. And we had a great, I think it's important to have a fuel provider in your area, somebody who's going to work with you and help you understand that. And the person we have is an expert in that field. So he was able to kind of push us in the right direction on what we actually need at each of those stations.
Helping you do the site visit.
Exactly.
Getting the right permitting for a new fuel site.
Right.
It's interesting, though. The EPA doesn't even regulate the propane fuel sites because you can't spill propane.
Correct.
Like diesel, the risk mitigation for a seepage and an underground tank is pretty high, and the cleanup costs are pretty substantial. But the propane provider that you selected helped with all the permitting,
yes,
and the site plan, the setbacks from the buildings and what sizes that could be. And so did you start off with one of those great big 18,000-gallon tanks? Or?
No, we started off with a 2K, small 2K on a skid where you can pull it and move it to different sites. So it wasn't grounded in the, wasn't there. He put the necessary safety pylons around it, and we knew at that time when we got to 2K, we were in the midst of building a new main facility.
Oh, so you needed some flexibility with moving that around.
Exactly. So we knew if we had the 2K here, later on we can move it down to one of our smaller bus lots eventually when we move to a new lot. So when we built a new bus facility, our main bus facility, we put in an 18K tanker.
Okay.
And then in that, now the guy, our provider, helped us do all that.
So this scalability of the infrastructure is important because you're not turning a fleet over overnight.
No.
So you started off with how many propane buses on the first round?
I believe it was 15 around. We started taking buses February of 2017. We started taking propane buses in.
Okay. So let's back up just a little bit. The profile for the city of Newport News Public Schools, you move how many kids?
Roughly around 24,000 students.
And how many buses does it take to do that?
We also have 340 buses, and we probably, at that time when we had that, we probably operate around 280 of the buses, got spares and things of that nature. So
true. So you started with 15. Mm-hmm. How did that go over with? You said your chief mechanic kind of brought it up. So you have a little bit of buy-in there, and you talked about how the superintendent liked how quiet it was. But what about did you have any obstacles to overcome with either students or teachers or parents or principals? How did they feel about students riding on a propane bus?
I think it was more of skeptical because you think of propane, most people think of,
Hollywood.
People think of propane tank. They think of the gas tank that you have in, the propane tank you have on your grill. And I think educating them, like we did a couple of school board presentations to make sure they understood, even the school board members, to make sure they understood the safety aspects of, and that's what we try to preach, the safety aspects of propane versus riding in a diesel bus. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't a lot of pushback from the community or, from our drivers, for the people who were going to drive it. It took them a little bit longer to get used to driving it because it kind of felt like a car driving.
Oh, yeah, the acceleration.
So that took some time. So working with our fuel provider and our mechanics, trying to get them to understand how to.
You don't need to mash it all the way down to begin with.
You can drive and get the most out of it you can out the vehicle. So it went very well, actually.
So we start with 15. I guess we had a good experience.
Yes.
So over the years, you've been replacing. What are you up to now?
We are 153 propane buses, and we have 15 on order right now in Bluebird.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So is this hey, we're going to do the whole fleet? I mean, is this the kind of success we're experiencing?
Yes, our goal is to change over the whole fleet. It's been a little bit slow. Prices creep up. We have to. Our money comes from capital money, comes from the city. So you just get what you can out of that. But we also apply for all the grants or the rebates that have been out there. So every time there's
propane qualifies for that because it's one of the clean alternatives too.
Yes. So we make sure if whether it's a state or federal grant or rebate, we apply for them every year. Whether we get them or not, we still continue to do that. We recently got selected for the EPA one. That just got awarded in April, so that's a good grant for us to have. So we were able to buy 15 buses instead of 13. We can only buy 13 before, and now we're buying 15 buses. So that helps us out tremendously.
Whittling away especially those older diesels that don't have the emissions that we can tolerate anymore. So you talked about how quiet these things are.
Right.
So the drivers, not just the superintendent, likes being able to talk to students and not shout and whatnot. What about the 3 locations? Now we talked about the scalability. You started off with a 2,000-gallon storage tank. Where are you at now with infrastructure?
So at the main lot, we're still the same. We still have the 18K tank. And earlier you talked about the EPA, the different things, rules in place for diesel fuel, especially when it's in the ground. And we had an issue that came up this year where the insurance company said, hey, you have to get those tanks out of the ground because they only thin skin, they only one plow wall. They weren't EPA standards because they were much older. So that presented a...
So even before any leaks, you had to take care of them.
We had to take them out, and one of them had to be done within this year. So we brought our provider in Phillips Gas and said, we're trying to figure out which direction we go in. Do we get another diesel tank and put it in the ground, knowing that we want to change our fleet over to propane eventually? And so we made the decision, we're going to go all propane downtown, and that's our downtown bus lot. So this summer, right after school ends in June, they're going to start putting in the 18,000-gallon tank
at that location,
and that will become all propane buses there. So we'll have to. Some bus drivers might not be too happy because we got to move some buses around. So we make sure that we get the bang for our buck, putting our propane buses down there to that bus lot. And so we're taking that 2,000-gallon tanker that was currently at that lot, and we're going to move it up to our northern lot. So you have a 2K tanker there, and that lot is close enough to the main lot where if somebody had to go over to the main lot, they can use the propane there. So then we have propane at all 3 lots.
Okay. Well, when we build our propane buses here in Fort Valley, Georgia, we deliver them to all the school districts by drivers who actually drive them. I mean, Newport News is a good little drive, but Seattle, Washington's even a more. But we drive those all the way there because the infrastructure around the United States allows us to get fuel everywhere along the way.
Right.
What about longer trips? I know you guys do a lot of field trips. You're going to Washington, D.C.
Right.
Are you going back to the diesel buses for that, or?
No, we've been, we tried it out one time. We went out, my old fleet manager, we had a trip going to D.C., and he goes, I want to see something. I was like, what do you mean? He goes, I'm going to let that. He goes, so it was a Saturday trip, and we said, we're going to take the propane bus. And I was like, oh, really?
Okay.
And so he told the driver, this is my cell phone number. So the driver would call him every time they took a break to say, hey, what's your mileage? What are you looking like? Just so he can gauge how far we can actually go. And then we provided, at that time, it was early on when we first had the propane buses, he provided him certain places where he could stop to get propane.
Is that the Department of Energy's alt fuel station locator? Or did you work with your provider to?
We worked with our provider. He helped us in the beginning, help us find where we can get refueling at different parts. Now we kind of do it on our own. We kind of know where to go. But we had the driver go all the way to D.C. and he came out, almost got all the way back, and we finally had to no, you need to fuel up. So we get about 360 miles. Really taking up to DC, you get about 360 is our gauge. We have to refuel back up again. So it was, and now we go to North Carolina and parts of North Carolina, and so we're not afraid to take the buses. Before we kind of leery about it, but now take the propane bus because the infrastructure is there. The infrastructure is more and more. There's more districts within our state that have propane also that can help us provide fuel. So
there you go. Well, very good.
Yeah.
So we're looking at what kind of time frame for this whole 300 fleet to then be on propane?
At this rate, it's probably
4 years,
probably more than that. Maybe maybe 7 to 10 years. We'll see.
based on your replacement rate.
Yeah, based on our replacement rate, and if we can get our brothers at the city to help us out a little bit more, and just taking advantage of the different grants out there to kind of help us along. So we try to get them.
Or are the brothers at the city, who have the purse strings there,
Right.
are they seeing a difference in cost savings of propane versus the operating the buses on diesel?
For us, our district sees that.
Mm-hmm.
For the city, they more or less provide just the capital funds for that. But they understand because we are in partnership with them with quite a bit of programs within the city. They come to us, hey, we want to use your buses for this program. We want to use, we have the One City Marathon in the city of Newport News, and that takes, we had over 40 buses being used. They come to us to use and we use all our propane buses. For those, we do not use any diesel buses.
Put your best foot forward.
Yes, we do. So they see the reliability of them.
Mm-hmm.
They're quiet, being good stewards in the community, so to speak, with those buses.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. This has been a bird's eye view of alternative fuels reliability.